על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד.
Simchat Torah marks the sequence of the Jewish year, a new cycle beginning with the first verses of the Torah immediately following the last. In TBI's 90th year, I think it's timely to consider the cycle of our history and the vision of our founders. TBI was created by a group of friends who perceived Reform Judaism as a form of Jewish conservation and a way of halting assimilation. They set out to create a Jewish community which expressed their values of a modern Jewry integrated into society, defining what it meant to be Jewish in the modern world. They wanted to create an atmosphere of spiritual satisfaction, offering services which would delight congregants, in the process developing enlightened and respect for Judaism. Coupled with this was an emphasis on gender equality and active participation by women in all aspects of the organisation, expressed in the makeup of the first board and in the Articles of Association. These founders came with a knowledge of Judaism. Ada Phillips was the daughter-in-law of the Reverend Solomon Phillips, first appointed in Sydney in 1833, while TBI's first president, Ernest Levinson, was the nephew of Isaac Jacobs, a founding board member of the St Kilda Hebrew congregation, who, from its inception, had agitated for reforms to liturgical practice. Views he elaborated in his well-researched books, exploring contemporary philosophical changes of late 19th century Judaism and arguing for reforms in Melbourne. In the 1930s, TBI was aligned with Anglo-Liberal Jewry, seeking advice, guidance and financial support from the Honourable Lily Montague and the World Union of Progressive Judaism, writing to London to request assistance in securing rabbis to serve the congregation. In so doing, they expressed concern about the possibility of the American influence, although the first three rabbis who briefly served here all came from North America. These three introduced a form of Jewish practice which was more radical than TBI might recognise today. They considered Friday nights as a time for family gathering and thus held services on Saturday mornings and Sunday evenings. They also hosted group confirmation services rather than B'nai Mitzvahs, an action which might be interpreted as consistent with their attempts at ensuring equal treatment of boys and girls. With the appointment of Rabbi Sanger in 1936, many of these radical reforms were curtailed, and he merged the expectations of Anglo-Liberal Jewry with that of the traditions of German Reform. This perhaps better suited the temperament of the board and certainly assisted in subsequently helping European refugees to feel at home in the congregation. As with today, Jewish maintenance for younger generations was recognised as crucial. In the 19th century, all three Melbourne synagogues had seen the primacy of Jewish education, establishing schools as their first priority, subsequently employing rabbinical figures who could both teach and read and lead services. TBI in 1930 was no different, establishing a religious school prior to the arrival of the first rabbi. This integrated community wanted to ensure that their children received a religious education, enabling them to stay connected to Judaism and to withstand the threats of anti-Semitism. But they recognised that education was not enough and that a social and communal connection to Judaism was also required. To achieve this, they formed a number of Jewish youth groups, and TBI was the first synagogue to introduce dedicated youth services. What is remarkable about these achievements is that they commenced at the height of the Depression and grew and developed during the war years, maturing from a few extended families of 78 members in 1930 to 1,500 members by war's end. Taking a lead from Lily Montague, TBI has focused its philanthropic work inwardly and outwardly, with philanthropic outreach and interfaith dialogue a foundational aspect. Rabbi Sanger rallied the community to assist in settling refugees, organising teams of congregants to both meet boats, support individuals and families to settle and find work. In some instances, members even sponsored unknown co-religionists to leave Germany, and many German-speaking refugees found a home at TBI. During this terrible year, we have all been obliged to stay connected through digital means. But from TBI's formation, the board saw the opportunity of technology for outreach to Jewish and non-Jewish audiences. From the very first of our foundation, the board explored ways of broadcasting services, discussions on Jewish topics and liturgical music. For technical reasons, this couldn't be achieved for 6 years, but we all may be surprised to hear that TBI began broadcasting in 1936. I would like to conclude by saying something about my family's contribution, which I think sums up the themes of gender equality and an embracing community. Focusing on the role played by my grandmother, Vera. Although the first president, Ernest Levinson, was her uncle, and her husband, Dr. Montefiore Silberberg, is remembered as TBI's longest-serving president, she was the one who had experienced Anglo-liberal Judaism as a child. Born in Ballarat and growing up peripatetically between London and Melbourne, I believe that her family attended the St John's Wood Liberal Synagogue, where another uncle, Bertram Levinson, had been an early member. English translations of prayers were part of her childhood, and I have this 1902 copy of Hester Rothschild's English translation of Prayers and Meditations, a Companion for Jewish Ritual. Finally, I feel this copy of the Union Prayer Book sums up TBI's values. Presented by my grandmother Vera to Dr. Sanger's mother on her arrival in Melbourne in 1937, both as a warm welcome and a hope that TBI would become a community and a home from a refugee from Germany, and that welcoming attitude to Jews and those in need continues today. Shabbat Shalom.
על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Firstly, let me congratulate Sue Silberberg for her honour of being this year's Kallat Torah. Listening to her chronicle her family's history with our congregation has been fascinating, and she honours that history with her continued support, engagement and involvement with our beloved TBI. Sue's wonderful drush reflected on our proud history, and it falls to me to draw our focus to the future. I congratulate Rabbi Lazaro, Rabbi Ettlinger and Cantor Lulum and the entire TBI team for their world-leading virtual offerings and for making these high holidays so available to our congregation via FM radio and the various online platforms of YouTube, Facebook and the incredible Yachad website. Right now, more of our congregation are viewing our Simchat Torah service than ever before, and I'm delighted to confirm that Cabrini Hospital and Epworth Hospital are able to stream our services into their hospital rooms via their pastoral care channels, so that our congregants that are currently unwell are watching and sharing in the joy of this Simchat Torah service. It is truly a new world, and TBI has taken the opportunity through these difficult times to expand and not to contract, to develop and not to regress, to blaze a new trail for others to follow, and I'm thrilled to have been part of this transition. My children are fourth generation TBI members. My father, siblings and children have all been bar and bat mitzvahed at TBI, and TBI has always been a pillar of our family's Judaism. TBI has always been there for us. But we can't just assume TBI will always be here. We must begin to take steps to ensure that TBI is financially strong and that every person who wants to experience progressive Judaism can do so without the fear of not being able to afford it. The cost of providing a Jewish education to our children, as well as the huge costs associated with owning a home, are stretching our family's budgets to breaking point, and our membership fees are becoming too much to bear. We must find ways to reduce the cost of membership. To this end, Rob Sword, Robert Hershen, Alla Meadownick, Rebecca Silk and myself founded the TBI L'Dor V'Dor Foundation. The purpose of that foundation is to build up a nest egg of funds to create a revenue stream that can be used to help ensure that TBI will be able to serve our community for generations to come. We have already received support from some generous TBI families, and we will be taking every opportunity to remind people of the importance of making a donation or a bequest to the foundation. TBI must also continue to represent the minority of the minority. We must continue to have an open door policy to all those who seek progressive Judaism. We have all experienced the nachas that comes from families sitting together to enjoy our services and watching our principles of equality on display. It is so important that TBI exist and be strong and lead the way in recognising the equal role of women in religious and communal life, as well as supporting the LGBTI community. No one who wants to be a progressive Jew should ever feel anything but equal to all other Jews. Change is upon us, and change is what's required to keep us strong. We need to be engaged and together, truly Yachad. I'm very grateful for having been given the opportunity to share my thoughts with you this evening, and I commit to continuing to make myself available to assist TBI to ensure future generations will be able to continue to experience the inclusiveness of progressive Judaism. Thank you for this honour, thank you for your time, and Shabbat Shalom.
Sweet as honey on Natan.